happening?
Are we live?
I've learned that you don't say somebody was an addict because clearly that's something that you carry with you for a long time, and the practice of it is one of meticulous consciousness of where the closest AA meetings are, and does the city that you're going to have places where you can have these sorts of connections, like you say. So to say somebody was an addict would dismiss how hard addicts have to work in order to not fall back into their addict ways. And I think when you look at where we are right now in terms of just what's happening with addiction across the board, just pure addiction across the board, you kind of don't even want to ask the question, be like, say something to lift up the addicts, Will. But it's just like, what's just taking into just understanding that there is a high level of addiction into this, and you're somebody that struggles with it, but continues to persevere to the healthiest form of yourself. What's some gems that you can drop around that?
Yeah. So a couple things. First of all, you can never get somebody ready. You can try, you can offer them support, and I would offer them support and love and connection. But until they're ready to say, I have a problem, I am an addict or an alcoholic, you can't force readiness upon them. And that is a crucial piece, because a lot of people around them will get dragged down into that because they want to control the addict, and they just can't. And the really tragic thing is sometimes they won't get ready and then they'll die. But I think one of the reasons that I'm here today and I haven't had a drink of alcohol in, almost 4 years is because I had the love and support, so that when I was in my dark place, I was able to reach out to you guys. I mean, we sat through one intervention. I wasn't ready then, but I remember that. And when I thank God that I was able to go to rehab and go to sober living. One thing that I really do wanted to mention, and this is controversial, but I also think it's really important to talk about. So what do we do with the crisis? There's so many things. I think we need to focus more on the connection. I think we need to look at addicts as sick people and not criminals, but it's a blurry line because you can have somebody that is also a criminal, right? Like a drug dealer who's using is a criminal. I think drug dealers, especially in bulk with fentanyl and stuff, do deserve to be prosecuted, but single use, I don't think. So the controversial idea is, in Portugal in 2000, they had the highest rate of overdose deaths in Western Europe. And they decided to do something about that. And so they took literally all the funds that they were using to prosecute single-use drug users and restructured their system so that they would not go to jail, but they would be treated as sick individuals. And so they actually decriminalized drugs, not to sell, but for use. And then their overdose death rate plummeted. And within a couple of years, they had way less drug use on the whole. And so people hear decriminalize and they think, oh my gosh, well, of course we don't want to promote people using drugs, but this is not legalized. We're not going to be selling heroin at Walgreens, right? But I think that people are going to use the war on drugs has been an utter fail. It came from a good place. People meant well, but every single year over year, we've had more drug use and more drug deaths. So it's a fail. Just say no was a fail. So what do we do? In a real world, we'd say just say no and everything is golden. Great. That's not the case. What I think we need to do is we need to be realistic and look at it. And I think Portland actually took a really good step. We don't want to promote drug use. We have to accept that people are going to use drugs, whether we like it or not. So making sure those drugs are clean and pure and they're not adulterated, or, if you're a heroin addict, it's not cut with fentanyl, which can be lethal. I think making sure people have Narcan training so that they can resuscitate someone if they are overdosing on opioids. But I think the biggest thing is we need to restructure our legal system. And I believe the best way forward is to decriminalize drugs and make sure that we look at people that are using drugs as sick people, get them the connection and the support they need to change their lives if they're ready. Now, that does not mean that we don't prosecute drug dealers. I think if you are selling drugs, lethal drugs like fentanyl, you are still a criminal. But in Canada, they have what's called safe injection sites. And so you go and you get pure heroin and you do it in front of medical personnel. And if you overdose, they've had 0 overdose deaths since they've done this. 0. Wow. If you overdose, there's somebody there to resuscitate you. And then you also, while you're there, either getting resuscitated or you're about to get high, you have like a lot of options to get sober. You have medical people there, you have other sober people that are trying to spread the message. You have resources that can try to help you turn your life around. And it's not perfect. Portugal still has some, heroin users, but they're actually, I think the last time I checked, they're at like the bottom 2% of heroin users, not just heroin deaths in Western Europe. They were the number one overdose death by percentage in 2000. So clearly something that they're doing is correct. You have to take all the funds that you were using to prosecute those people and redirect them towards trying to get people the help that they need and not looking at them as criminals.
When you're like, I'm going to say something controversial, I had no idea what was coming. Right. But it's actually beautiful, because what you said echoes so much of what we like. A recurring theme on this podcast is that so many of the systems that we look to, that have people's lives in their hands, right, often are doing way too many jobs. And there's this other system over here that's people centric that we can funnel resources to. But there's a mindset shift that needs to happen, right? Because I think for a lot of people, what you just described is all well and good until it's my tax dollars paying for it, right? And I think it's hard to get people's minds to shift to the place where we're so concerned about taking care of people that we can have the nuance to explain why something like like tax dollars going towards a situation where somebody can do drugs is beneficial. And I think there's a lot of, I don't want to spend my money, that prevents us to getting to that nuance, right? Especially on that. People have a hard time, I think, extending that empathy to situations that they don't feel like will ever apply to them.
Yeah.
It's a great objection, but the reality is, in the long run, it's going to be cheaper to spend money that way, because it costs, I think, somewhere around $35,000 a year at the minimum to house somebody in a federal prison. It costs how much money to send an ambulance to resuscitate people. It costs how much money to take care of the homeless that are using. I mean, the reality is we're already spending that money and it's not working.